when you live in this world as a man, you're going to have discontents. You're going to have things that work just absolutely against you. And I'd even argue any human that is born and raised in this culture, we're going to have specific issues and problems. But there's this solution that we keep going for, and that's become part of the problem, especially for men, and especially when you have been a men's coach for 18 years. Yes, there are direct problems, but the solution that men are sold has now become part of the problem. And the only way I know how to tell this story is to tell it from the perspective of how I've seen it unfold. I've lived in and outside of US culture for the last 16 years. I've been able to have a job that's kept me independent and free from really any sort of cultural bonds. In terms of sex and relationships, I've been married, I've been divorced. I follow no societal narrative of what a relationship is supposed to be. And in all of that, this isn't about power, this isn't about being dominant, this isn't about some reaction to being belittled as an American man. This is only a pursuit of my own expression, my own independence. And that is something that is for men, it is for my family, it is for fatherhood, it is for higher thought, it is for living in one of the most rigid moral codes that I could have. When you look at the chaos of our world, everything is a dysfunction. There's a problem with masculinity in our modern culture where men are so diminished that in order to talk about certain things, whether that's divorce and custody, whether that's PTSD, whether that's trauma, whether that's sex, whether that's the many different things that are realities in a man's life, we have to be rebels from that society. And we get this equation really easily. We have PC culture, feminism, all sorts of different stuff saying that these things are toxic about masculinity. And they could be true. There could be examples of those being bad things, but for almost every single one of those things, there's something where it's not toxic, but it happens. We see this over and over again. We call sexual activity a form of misogyny or promiscuity for a man, misogyny, but for a woman it's not. And there's all these comparable things in the court system. You know, when a man gets angry and has his kids taken away and he complains about it, he's seen as being hurt or butthurt or unacceptable in some sort of way of presenting himself, and he just needs to get over it. But a woman, you know, she should fight for it and destroy the person because it's a form of liberation, and that's good. I'm paraphrasing these things, but we get it. There's a huge imbalance in our culture, and if we deny it, we cause a problem. So there's a lot to all of this that I'm heavily opinionated about. And in fact, I don't think that there's a subject or a topic, especially dealing with men's development and something that has been my life's work, that I'm not opinionated in. And this is a tough one, and it's a problem and a solution that nobody seems to be seeing to a plague that keeps repeating over and over and over again. I really want to make this clear because for 18 years, I've worked with men on some of the most difficult things. For each and every single one of those days, for 18 years, I dedicated my life to helping men. This started out with the pains of our culture from sex and dating, moved to addiction, PTSD. I hear a lot of people talk about how they've prevented men from suicide. I wasn't just making a podcast or some piece of content that helped guys get past a hard hour. I sat with men for years who had the many problems that society ignored, judged them for, and actually caused. But I also helped solve and stood with men who were sold a false answer that they happily bought because they were so desperate from other men who cheated them and sold them a fake dream. When it comes down to me and coaching and working with men, it isn't a hobby, it isn't something I'm detached from. It literally is my life's work. And I do not know anybody who has the same experience as me. So I entirely get men's problems. I have gotten them and submerged myself in them. I understand the pain that has been given. I understand what it's like to carry it. I understand what it's like to process through it. And I understand what it's like to have to let go of it. And I've gone so far with this that I don't just want to listen to other men about it. I want to actually understand why our culture is saying men are toxic. I want to understand what caused feminism to make it do what it did and be acceptable by society. I also want to understand where it went wrong. And see, there's a difference in this. When you are actually and only part of the solution for men and not a part of the political hysteria, you see a huge difference. What helps men in divorce and custody, what actually helps men win their cases in a court system which is said to be impossible for men to win, what helps men get to manage their addiction and rebuild their entire lives back from one of the most devastating phenomenons in human existence. What helps vets or men who have seen abuse get past PTSD and trauma is not this hysterical yelling and screaming that we see, which mimics exactly what feminism did so poorly and created its own problem. You see something else. You see the real solution, but what's so horrific about it all is you see a whole new problem be created because men and women are too immature, too blind, too reactive to work for an actual solution, to find wisdom in it and communicate about it. And now this problem is not just coming from the culture, not just coming from feminism or politically correct people. It's coming from men who are selling a false solution to desperate men. Now, this problem I talk about quite a bit, but one of the problems that comes in all of this is that because in order for men who feel these real things like resources for divorce, resources for being angry, for being traumatized, or wanting sex in a certain way, they're told over and over again that those are examples of their toxicity and they need to open their hearts and be good and be kind to the feminine and just do this. That doesn't speak to most men, and it's probably not the solution for most men. I'll acknowledge that some men, a minority of them, think there's benefit, which then, that movement of whatever is saying, yeah, we did it, we have the solution. You don't. You've created a new problem for men because you've rejected those men who don't see that as a solution or don't have that solution work, and you force them to become rebels to the society, building a counterculture. This is terrible. And when we see things like the red pill or MGTOW or whatever, which can be good ideas, maybe not all of them, we see them led by people that are not leaders and that are basically putting out a huge image of male immaturity. It discounts strength, it discounts integrity, it discounts building anything. And it's like the quick fix of masculinity being the main voice of masculinity today. And I want you to think about this, because the more you diminish something, the more you cause pain for somebody. The more you pressure somebody into change, the more you make people feel cut out, angry, and diminished. This was very much what feminism complains about and saying what happened to women, and you're now doing it to men. And you've been doing it to men for 50 years, more than that. And now there's a whole subculture of men that are very, very, very angry. Not only that, there's a whole subculture of leaders in masculinity that are terrible leaders that everybody's listening to. But what's even worse in all of this isn't just that dynamic. It's actually that you have men looking for something that is natural to them. Their ambition, their sex, their wanting to compete, their drive forward, all pushed through a filter of toxicity, where they've gone through this process of having the urge of that, trying to change it and get it out of their system, cut it out because PC culture told them that was the right thing, find out that that was not the solution and made them tremendously unhappy, frustrated, and full of rage, to then go find it in the underbelly of society. And now, sadly, that underbelly is a form of leadership, and it's created a new problem. So I'll say this, You know, one of the things that I love about humanity and especially masculinity is the pursuit of wisdom and the pursuit of change and the pursuit of leadership. And I've been a leader of men for the past 18 years of my life, and I've taken it very seriously. It's to a high standard. I started out teaching in sex, and I'm not at all ashamed of that and still teach it. And one of the reasons for that is because it was one of the things that men were robbed from in our society. That they had to go look at a counterculture to learn about sex and sexuality and feel whole in dating women. Their only option was to look at clowns to teach them, because modern psychology and therapists and these types of things was not there for them to actually guide them. It taught them a lie. But in all of this coaching of men, I've learned that for every solution that you have, it can absolutely create a problem for the next generation. This is why I think it's so important that we start thinking about how we solve our problems today, especially our social problems and our problems having to do with men and women. By all means, I'm not saying that PC culture is right and we need to share whatever. No, man, people from that culture caused a huge damage to men, and they need to be responsible for it and acknowledge it. But in addition to that, I don't think that every man should throw that in your face or do the same thing that feminism did to screw everything up, saying like, well, I have a problem and I'm finally going to stand up and you're going to listen and I'm going to force you because you owe me reparations. This is not a way of responsibility. This is not a way of wisdom. This is not a way of any sort of future that will build something good for everybody. I think one of the most important things that men can do is start to rebuild their lives and make themselves better people. I think you should get in a community. This is why I started my communities, but you don't need to be in mine. I think it's important that men get back into their nature, and that isn't taking a picture on a mountaintop or whatever, or doing steroids and lifting weights. That is understanding where their nature comes from and where their evolution comes from and what it brings them and how strength is developed in masculinity. I also think that men should get into wisdom and philosophy and not just read a paraphrasing of Stoicism, but actually try and live that if that is something that they like. And I will also tell you there's other philosophies out there that I think are enormously complete and beautiful and awesome and very strong. See, the power in you as a man is within you, and it's in your nature. You need to find it. You need to cultivate it. You need to open it up and bring it. It is not something that is given to you or handed to you in some charitable way. You got to find it in your mind. You got to find it in your body. You got to find it in your spirit, in your heart. And you have to find it in how you live. And how you live now builds your future tomorrow. As I always say to everybody who watches my channel, first, thank you so much. But in addition to that, if you're interested in being a part of a community that does this, that lives this, that internationally travels, that has resources on that has resources on how to win your divorce and custody battle when nobody else really did that for anybody, has resources on addiction, it has resources on dating, it has resources on trauma and every single one of man's problems in this modern world, well, that's what the Rising Man is. Check out the links down below, and if it's something that you like and you want to get into my community, you'll work with me personally as well as guys who have done this for nearly 15 years now as a community, never missing and always seeing personal excellence as their goal. And on that note, take it easy.